I talk about the U.S. Navy, the Age of Sail, and why it was created, which was during the Barbary War. Well, let's say the Quasi-War, but mainly the Barbary War. During the Barbary War, the Americans were fighting pirates of the Mediterranean because after the Americans won their independence from Great Britain, the United States, the Americans lost their protection, and so the Barbary pirates, which consist of Algiers, Tripoli, and Tunis, they would send their pirates or corsairs to attack American merchant ships because in order to be protected from these raids, countries had to pay tribute, which the Americans, now newly independent, weren't able to. The United States fought two Barbary Wars, right before the War of 1812 and right after the War of 1812. The reason why there was two wars was because we did not complete our mission during the first war, and when the War of 1812 happened, the United States Navy was too occupied fighting the British Royal Navy, that the Barbary corsairs, they were raiding American merchant ships, which, to be honest, wasn't that many because of the war that was happening, but it still happened. But during the first Barbary War, at the beginning, the Americans, we didn't really know what we were doing. It was a disaster. We were trying to find our footing because Thomas Jefferson, he didn't believe in a navy because he thought it was too monarchical. But when it came to protecting American merchant ships, that's when he started thinking, yeah, maybe this is a good idea to protect our interests. And so after two failed squadrons, we have Commodore Edward Preble, and Edward Preble is responsible for having the most success of the first Barbary War during his tenure as Commodore. Preble gave young Lieutenant Stephen Decatur the green light to sneak into the Tripoli harbor and burn the USS Philadelphia, which got captured on October 31st, 1803, for reasons like uncharted reefs. And so after the burning of the USS Philadelphia, that's when the United States Navy got world recognition, because even Admiral Horatio Nelson called it the most bold and daring act of the age, and that's a pretty high praise from the hero of Trafalgar. During the summer of 1804, the Battle of the Gunboats, Edward Preble had his whole fleet, which consisted of one frigate, a few small vessels, and some gunboats that he borrowed from the Kingdom of Sicily. He had his fleet bombard the batteries of Tripoli, and because this was an attempt to bring Yusuf Karamalli, who was the Bashar, to the negotiation table, which this did bring a lot of attention to not only Yusuf Karamalli, but also the other the European powers, because they were starting to recognize that the Americans, though this is a very young country, they are fighting fiercely for their own interests. We refuse to be pushed around by these older nations. Some events happened afterwards, but eventually the First Barbary War came to a close, and it's interesting to point out how Pope Pius VII even gave recognition to the United States Navy, saying that the United States Navy has done more for Christianity than the other European nations for ages, fighting against the Muslim nations that had been raiding Europe, terrorizing the waters for centuries. And because the United States stood their ground, that's the reason why there's free trade in the Mediterranean. In the beginning, America has fought against Muslim nations, and how the Islamic culture has slowly crept into the Western civilization, America is the final stronghold. We as a people cannot risk lose our country to the Islamic nations, because even though they're so peaceful in small numbers, once they come together, Islamic culture and Islamic beliefs cannot coexist with Western beliefs, with Christianity. No matter what people may think, there's two different gods, the Allah and the Almighty. And even though they're called Abrahamic religions, they're not the same and they cannot coexist.